can't be here. So this year we've been working our way through biblical characters. Last time we kind of went off a little bit and did Sodom and Gomorrah, which was kind of a tangent from where we were, because before that we had already gotten through Adam and Eve and Noah and Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebecca and Jacob and his 4 wives. So now we are moving on to Joseph. The Joseph story is very big. It is very long. There's a lot to cover. So I'm telling you now, we're only going to do the beginning today. And next month I have down as the 12 tribes. So that will be like the next piece of it. All right, Brian, Jenny, and Eli. Is that right? Okay, well, welcome. Okay. So here we go. So I'm going to share my screen. Please feel free anytime to jump in and ask questions, make comments, etc. This is much more fun when people participate. This sharing is not what I want. Sorry. I have to do the slideshow. All right. Can everybody see the slideshow? Are we good? Are we good? Yes, we're good. You guys are seeing it? Excellent. Okay. It's always my challenge is to see everything at once, to see the chat and see all of your pictures and see the slideshow. I'm getting myself all set up here. Okay. So we are starting out in the book of Genesis. Just as a quick review, Jacob eventually has 12 sons and 1 daughter. So Joseph is down the line, one of the sons. We're going to start with his story. So Marilyn, would you like to read us from the first 2 verses of Genesis 37?
Sure. Now Jacob was settled in the land where his father had sojourned, the land of Canaan. This then is the line of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended the flocks with his brothers as a helper to the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah, and Zilpah. And Joseph brought bad reports of them to their father.
Okay, so by this time, Joseph's mother is already dead, right? Joseph is the son of Rachel. Rachel had 2 children. She had Joseph and Benjamin. So his mother is no longer around, but his father had 2 like handmaidens, Bilhah and Zilpah. So they were kind of helping raise all the kids. So the story is taking place when Joseph is 17 years old. There's a theme here that we see in lots and lots of biblical text. Anybody see something that jumps out at you? It's an ongoing theme among our patriarchs.
This is the line of Jacob. So usually with each of the forefathers, they say this is the line of so-and-so, and then you get the children's names.
Absolutely. Great. So we hear all the how everybody's descended. Terrific. Okay, give me 1 sec. I just want to make sure I get the list of everybody who just came in. All right, welcome everybody. So terrific. The thing I was thinking of, but you are absolutely right, Aviva, is that Joseph is a shepherd, right? And his brothers are shepherds. And we know Moses is a shepherd. We have lots and lots of shepherds in Jewish history. King David was a shepherd. So we've got, they're in the land, Joseph's a shepherd. Okay. And then we hear that Joseph brought bad reports about his brothers to his father. So for any of you who have been at multiple classes this year, you notice that this sibling rivalry is not new. What other sibling rivalries in the Bible have we looked at this year?
Jacob and Esau.
Jacob and Esau,
Cain and Abel.
sure. Cain and Abel. Okay, so this is not a new thing, and we're going to see it again with Joseph. All right, terrific. To everybody who just came in, welcome. So here are some commentaries. There are some really good commentaries about this text, and I try and bring this in because I want to learn this text on 2 levels. I want to learn it for the people who are learning from the first time, and the people coming in have learned it before. I want to go deeper. Jen asked the purpose of listing the descendants when introducing a person in the text. Anybody have a good answer for that? I think there are multiple answers, but why do you think? Why do you think it tells us who somebody's parents and grandparents are? Because the Torah does this a lot. What do you think, Karen?
I think it's because, so this is like when people first started being born, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of like, you can see where they came from. And then if it's like a different branch, you could see how everybody connects, like how we do our own family trees, maybe.
Right. It's genealogy, right? We're seeing how everybody is connected to one another. Absolutely. Karen and Molly Beth, I'm going to ask both of you a favor because I've got multiple people in some of these economy rooms and I'm worried I'm not going to get the list of all the teachers that have come. So if you guys can let me know later, that would be great because I don't want to not give somebody credit. All right. So yeah, I think the genealogy and where we came from, I think it also is a reminder that we stand on the shoulders of those who come before us, right? And we are a product of where we're coming from. And I think we also see in the Torah a lot of things that are handed down from one to another, right? Jacob's mother favored him, his mother favored him, his father favored Esau. And now we're going to see that he's going to favor his son Joseph. So some of these stories, we see the same trajectories going on and on. All right, so a few commentaries. So he was a lad. That's how this text described him. And Rashi said he behaved childishly, fixing his hair and touching up his eyes so that he would appear more handsome. We hear a lot about Joseph being, first of all, very good looking, but also vain about his looks. With the sons of Bilhah, that is to say, he was frequently with the sons of Bilhah because the other brothers would demean them and he acted friendly to them, right? So of these 12 brothers and one sister, there were 4 mothers. So there's fighting based on who his mother is. Evil tales about them. Any evil he saw in his brothers, the sons of Leah, he would tell their father. He'd tell them that they ate limbs from living animals, that they demeaned the sons of the handmaidens by calling them slaves, and that they were suspected of illicit sexual relations. So these are the things that he was telling his father about. And it tells us that he was punished. Joseph is going to be punished for this tale bearing, because even though when he's saying this stuff is true, he's still gossiping. He's saying bad things about his brothers. So what are the punishments going to be? This is going to be a little foreshadowing from the future. So for the report that his brothers ate limbs from living animals, that's what's going to lead to them slaughtering a goat when they sold him, and they didn't eat it a lot. For the report that he told about that they called their brothers slaves, Joseph is going to be sold as a slave. And because he talked about these illicit sexual relationships, he is going to have to deal with his master's wife, Potiphar, who is trying to seduce him. So this is a little foreshadowing, but it's basically saying the mistakes he made are going to come back to haunt him. Questions about that? Does that make sense? Okay, one more commentary. Jen Saber, do you want to read this one for us? It's from Pirkei de Rabbeinu HaKadosh.
Joseph brought their evil report to his father. Said the sages, 2 righteous men were punished on account of the bearing of malevolent reports, Jacob and Joseph. Because Joseph spoke badly of his brothers, he was incarcerated in prison for 12 years. And because Jacob listened to these reports, the divine spirit departed from him for 22 years. This teaches us that one who speaks negatively of another is punished once, while someone who listens to negative talk about another is twice punished.
Okay, so this tells us how very, very serious negative speech is, Lashon Hara. And I want to point out that Lashon Hara, negative speech, evil speech, is still evil speech, even if it's true. We shouldn't be talking badly about each other. And who the Talmud tells us that there are 3 people who are affected by gossip. One is the person who says it, one is the person who is spoken about, and the third is the listener. And the Talmud says, which is the most responsible? And the rabbis say the listener. Because if the listener stopped listening, the speaker wouldn't have anybody to gossip to. So we see this here, right? Jacob listened to gossip. And so that's a punishment of 12 years versus Joseph, which is only a punishment for 12 years. So I just thought that was a really interesting commentary. All right, going on with the story. Sarah, do you want to read us this part?
Now Israel loved Joseph best of all his sons, for he was the child of his old age, and he made him oh my goodness, I can't talk now.
Ornamented.
Ornamented tunic. Thank you, Zippy. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of his brothers, they hated him, so they could not speak a friendly word to him.
Okay, so a few things here. Ornamented tunic is an interesting translation. You sometimes hear it called a coat of many colors, but the literal Hebrew ketonet pasim means a striped coat. Well, whatever it is, he's the favorite son because we had him in his old age, and he gives him some kind of special garment he can wear all the time that makes him stand out as the special one. And his brothers hated him so much that they couldn't, and it says, Lo yachlu dabro l'shalom. They couldn't say a word in peace. They couldn't speak to them in peace. They couldn't say a friendly word. That's how bad things were between them. They couldn't even say anything nice to each other. And I don't know about you, but I've had times when my children have been fighting with each other, and there are times it gets like that, right? They can't say one word to each other that's kind, and it's terrible for a parent. So I can't imagine how hard this must have been. All right. So what does Rashi say about this? By the way, for those of you who are new, when you see a slide that's purple like this, it's no longer coming straight from the Torah text. It's a commentary from a rabbi, in this case, Rashi. So Reish Lakish said in the names of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, a person should not discriminate among his children, for on account of the coat of many colors, which our father Jacob made for Joseph, they hated him, right? You would think that Jacob would know this, right? He saw all the trouble that came from his brother, for him and Esau, from his parents picking favorites, but apparently did not learn the lesson. And about they couldn't speak peacefully with him. Rashi says, from what is stated to their discredit, we may learn something to their credit, right? This is bad that they couldn't speak kindly, but what is to their credit? That they didn't say one thing with their mouth and something different in their heart. In other words, they were so mad at their brother and they hated him, so they stayed silent instead of, saying bad things or pretending that they liked him. So that was kind of interesting. All right, Aviva, read us this part.
Once Joseph had a dream which he told to his brothers, and they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were binding sheaves in the field, when suddenly my sheaf stood up and remained upright. Then your sheaves gathered around and bowed low to my sheaf." His brothers answered, "Do you mean to reign over us? Do you mean to rule over?" And I'm sorry, it got cut off there.
Do you mean to rule over us? And they hated him even more for his talk about dreams. Okay, so the brothers maybe were smart enough not to say anything because they couldn't say anything nice. Joseph, who's young, he's 17 years old, does not know when to shut up, right? So he has these dreams where he's going to be ruling over his brothers, and instead of keeping it to himself, he tells them all about it, and it makes him even madder. So immaturity here we see from Joseph. Darla, go ahead.
He dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." And when he told it to his father and brothers, his father berated him. "What?" he said to him, "is this your dream you have dreamed? Are we to come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow low to you to the ground?" So his brothers were wrought up at him, and his father kept the matter in mind.
Okay, so here's a second dream. This one has his father bowing down to him as well. His brothers are mad. The father's remembering it. Maybe this is going to be important later on. And dreams, obviously, as we're going to see, play a very, very important part in this part of the Torah. All right. So why does his father?
A question.
Yeah.
And help us with the Hebrew. With this last point, his father kept the matter in mind. Is that he kept it in mind about the dreams, or but they were wrought up at him?
Oh, interesting. So the Hebrew says, "Ve'aviv shamar et hadavar," and his father guarded the words or the thing. It can be translated either way. Interesting. Is it the dream he kept in mind or his brother's anger? I think, given the story, it was the dreams, because Jacob doesn't seem to do much about the fact that Joseph and his brothers hate each other. Right? It's not like he steps in and tries to protect Joseph from them or recognizes there's any problem. So I think it's a dream he's keeping in mind.
So then the question is, with his experience with Esau, is this the normal for him? Of course,
that the brothers should hate each other?
Of course, brothers don't get along and they are rivals. And in the end, only one of them will get the birthright. And so,
That's a great
And-
interpretation, Roger. I always like wondered, why didn't he learn from the mistakes of his parent? And maybe he, just assumed this was normal, right? His family was so dysfunctional that he assumed that this was a normal thing for brothers to hate each other and for parents to favor each other. And it didn't even occur to him to do differently. That's very
And I
interesting thought.
also wonder, based on his experience, particularly at Shechem, is he accustomed to his older sons' shortcomings?
Yeah. Yeah,
Would
because
he, would he have found them, would he have been reporting bad things about them too? I mean, it's a horrible thought because we want to love all of our children, but some of them had shown him already. They were weak and angry and hostile.
I mean, that part, the whole part of Dinah and Shechem is coming after this. It's not yet, but you're right. There's a lot of bad stuff here. And it's interesting to think about what Jacob was thinking about all of it and what they learned afterwards. If we jump ahead, okay, Joseph ends up having two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay. And for any of you who have ever heard the blessing that people give to their sons on Friday night, like the tradition of blessing your children, you bless your daughters that they should be like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, right? The four mothers, that makes sense. But we bless our sons to be like Ephraim and Manasseh. So what's different about Manasseh and Ephraim? They're the first two brothers in the Torah that don't hate each other, right? Isaac and Ishmael didn't do well together. Jacob and Esau didn't do well together. Joseph and his brothers didn't do well together. But these are two brothers who actually get along with each other. So that's interesting. So maybe Joseph learns the lesson about how to raise his son. Okay, so why does Jacob rebuke Joseph? Because he sees that he's bringing hatred on himself. He sees that he's making things worse with his brother. And will we come? So when this dream says that Jacob and Joseph's mother and all the brothers are going to bow down, he's like, isn't your mother Rachel already dead? But Jacob didn't know that this was talking about Bilhah, who has kind of raised Joseph as if she were her mother. And Jacob intended for his sons to forget the whole matter so that they would not envy Joseph. So he said, we will come. Just as impossible for your mother, so is the rest meaningless. Like he was just trying to brush it aside so the brothers wouldn't be mad. Okay, Marilyn Carr, you want to read this?
Sure. One time when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flock at Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, your brothers are pasturing at Shechem. Come and I will send them to you. I'll send you to them. He answered, I'm ready.
Israel, by the way, is another name for Jacob, right? So this is Joseph's father, Jacob, saying he's going to send his son out to check on the brothers. Does this seem like a good idea? No, right? The brothers hate Joseph already, and he's sending Joseph out into this situation. Aviva, were you gonna say something?
I had a question. Just in the last verse, it called him Jacob, and now suddenly it's calling him Israel. Is there a reason that it's doing that it's making that distinction?
It's really interesting. I don't know, and I didn't come across a commentary about it when I was reading. What do you think? Do you have thoughts about it?
I don't know if it's just because he was doing something that wasn't the brightest. So the distinction is it's a different name. So maybe it's just a different thought. I don't know. It was just something I noticed that seemed kind of off.
If we think about, sorry, Roger, go ahead.
I mean, we could write a book on and I'm sure someone has, on the times when Jacob is still called Jacob after the angel changes his name, and when he's called Israel in the book of Breshit. Unlike when we think about it, when Avram's name is changed to Abraham and Sarai's name is changed to Sarah, they are never referred back again. But with Jacob, it happens. So there clearly there are reasons. I have heard a couple of interpretations. One is we've seen that the less mature, less wise version of this patriarch is still Jacob. We're seeing that when he talks and when he picks Joseph over the brothers. And so when we have a more mature, it's Israel. I've also heard that Jacob is the reference when dealing with the family, and Israel when he is somehow shaping the future nation. And as we know, by sending him out, Jacob / Israel is inadvertently shaping the destiny of the Jewish people, because in the next few sentences, everything that is going to happen in the future will happen when Joseph meets a mysterious stranger.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that, Roger. You know, that this is going to have a lot of impact on the whole Jewish people, so it's Israel. I was also thinking the word Israel means one who has struggled, right, with God and with angels and survived. Maybe this has to do with the struggle between Joseph and his brothers. But I love all of that. That's really great. Thanks for asking the question, Aviva, and Roger, thanks for the insight. It's really good. So here I am. So when the response of Joseph is, here I am, Hineni, right? We see this other places in the Torah. It says it's an expression of modesty and eagerness, right? He went ready to fulfill his father's commands, even though he knew his brothers hated him. He wanted to do what his father wanted. All right, Deb, would you like to read for us?
And he said to him, go and see how your master and bring me back word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. When he reached Shechem, a man came up upon him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, what are you looking for? He answered, I am looking for my brothers. Could you tell me where they are pasturing? The man said, they have gone from here, for I hear them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph followed his brothers and found them at Dothan.
So they weren't where they were supposed to be. So that's interesting. So the brothers maybe are not doing something so great because they're not in the place they're supposed to be pasturing the fields. Karen, wanna go on?
Well, I'm just going to say, and Joseph might very well have given up and been returning home to safety. And then this mysterious messenger, a human being, an angel, someone we don't know, directs him to find them. And everything that's going to happen to the Israelite people right through the Exodus is happening, will happen because of this stranger saying, I know where your brothers are.
What makes you think he was going to give up, Roger?
We could say, because he has been looking and we don't know. I mean, after you've been looking and it's not the safest place, you're in the wilderness. I think one could argue I've done it, Dad. I'm ready to head home, Jacob, and I tried my best. Not quite sure, but I just had that sense that this is really so much a turning point. And in some ways, I thought this mysterious messenger may be the most important person in the entire Torah, or close to it.
It's interesting. Yeah, and it just says
Because he
man.
will
It says
direct
ish.
Joseph
It doesn't say angel, but we know that angels
That's right.
certainly
That's
take
right.
human form. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Molly Beth, want to read this?
They saw him from afar, and before he came close to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, here comes that dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. And we can say, a savage beast devoured him. We shall see what comes of his dreams.
So here's my question for you. Does this seem like in the heat of the moment passion, or does this seem premeditated?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Why do you say both of you?
Well, it says they conspired. So obviously, it's something they had, have been a spur of the moment conspiracy, but also I was wondering for a while how angry they were at him, how much better off they would be without him. But the idea of just saying, you know,
You could also think that they've discussed it many times before, that they want to do away with him.
So you could really read it either way, that it was premeditated or if it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. But either way, they've decided they want to kill their brother. I apologize, I'm having a little internet problems. I hope I'm not freezing too badly. Can you guys still hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Jennifer, you want to read?
Which one?
Oh, sorry, Jen Saber, do you want to read?
Okay, yeah. But when Reuben heard, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben went on, "Shed no blood, cast him into that pit out in the wilderness, but do not touch him yourselves," intending to save him from them and restore him to his father.
So we have what we would call today an upstander, right? We have one person, one brother, Reuven, who tries to step in and save Joseph. So God testifies for Reuben. God's saying for Reuben that he said this only to save him. He didn't have a different motive. So to be able to come and take him out of there. He said, "I am the firstborn and the eldest of them all. The sin won't be attributed to me." So Reuben really doesn't, he's trying to step in. Don't kill them, throw them in the pit, and tries to figure out how he can save them, save Joseph later. Molly Beth, want to read?
When Joseph came up to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the striped tunic that he was wearing, and took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it.
Okay, so they take away that striped coat, that coat of many colors, they take it away from him, right? That's been the sign of the father's love, loving, him best. Take it away, throw him into the pit. This is really strange language here, and I've got some interesting commentary because it tells us the pit was empty, and then it tells us there was no water in it. Well, if the pit is empty, then of course there's no water in it because it's empty, right? So it's kind of strange wording. Am I coming in and out, or are you guys hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you.
I feel like I'm freezing. That's good.
Okay.
So what does Rashi say? Since it says now the pit was empty, do I not know that there was no water in it? For what purpose did the Torah write there was no water in it? To inform us that there was no water in it, but there were snakes and scorpions in it. So this is not exactly a pleasant pit that he is in. This is not a pleasant experience. Okay, Diane, would you like to read?
Sure. Then they sat down to a meal. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels bearing gum, balm, and what is that? Ladanum? Ladanum. Okay, to be taken to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain by killing our brother and covering up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, but let us not do away with ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed.
Okay, so Reuven was trying to actually save Joseph. Judah's trying to make a profit off of Joseph. Let's not kill him. Let's not make it our responsibility. Let's sell him and make some money. And he gets the brothers to go along. Marilyn Franklin.
When Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph up out of the pit. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who brought Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he rent his clothes. Returning to his brothers, he said, "The boy is gone. Now, what am I to do?"
So the Joseph goes from the Midianites to the Ishmaelites. He's passed on from one group to another of traders before he ends up in Egypt. So Reuben comes back and Joseph's not there. So what questions do you have about this text?
Where did Reuben go?
Where'd he
In the
go?
beginning.
Right?
Where is
He wants to save his brother's life. Where is he going? Why did he disappear? And what does it mean when it says he rent his clothes, that he tore his clothes? What's that all about? What's that a symbol of in Judaism?
Mourning.
Mourning, right? It's a sign of mourning, like his brother is dead. So let's look at what Rashi has to say about where Reuven was. Oh, it's not here. Huh, okay. So there are a couple of interpretations. I guess I didn't put them in here. There are a couple of interpretations from Rashi about where Reuven was. One says that all the sons took turns kind of taking care of their father, and today was Reuven's day, and so he had went back to take care of his father. Another one says he had gone off to pray. He had gone off to pray because he knew bad things were happening and he went to pray to try and protect Joseph. Either way, he wasn't there. Sarah, why don't you read this?
And they took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a kid, and dipped the tunic in the blood.
Okay. Kid meaning baby goat, not person, right? They killed the baby goat, dipped the tunic in the blood, right? This, again, this symbol of the father loving Joseph more. So God says, we saw this earlier, right? God says God pays back people measure for measure, even the righteous. Jacob deceived his father with goat skins. Remember, he put the goat skins on his arms so he'd seem hairy like Esau. And his sons deceived him with the blood of a goat. Right? So Jacob's deception comes back to haunt him with his sons deceiving him. I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, Aviva, you want to read?
They had the striped tunic taken to their father, and they said, "We found this. Please examine it. Is it your son's tunic or not?" He recognized it and said, "My son's tunic. A savage beast devoured him. Joseph was torn by a beast."
So I think this actually reminds us a lot again of the story of Jacob and Esau. The sons don't say your son was devoured by a wild beast. They just say, "Hey, do you recognize this tunic?" And let the father jump to his own conclusion, right? You remember what Rashi had said with Jacob and Esau? There was a way of kind of interpreting that he didn't exactly lie. He just misled his father. So it's coming back to him. So
And
why? Yes,
No,
Roger.
go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, why didn't God reveal the truth to Jacob? Why didn't he say to Jacob, "Hey, Joseph's not really dead"? And this is really interesting interpretation, because the brothers excommunicated and cursed anyone who would reveal the secret. And they included God in this like promise. So that's why God couldn't tell Jacob. Isaac, though, knew. Isaac was still alive, right? Joseph's grandfather. He still knew, but felt like if God didn't want to reveal it to Jacob, that he couldn't. So all this time, you have Jacob suffering, thinking his son is dead. Roger, what were you going to say?
Well, the second point is, but Esau and Jacob come together to bury Isaac in I think the previous parsha.
Yep.
So I don't understand how Isaac is still alive.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, that is how they conclude the parsha when Jacob / Israel wrestles with the angel and has his name changed, and then that parsha ends when they do come together.
I will have to, I'll have to look back at it, but the truth is there's a concept that says Ein Kadma la Torah, that there's no first or last in the Torah. The Torah does not always go in chronological order. So it could just be that that's one thing, that his death was out of chronological order because that's where they wanted to fit it in with the story.
Okay, and then the first point is there are three possibilities on how they can announce this. Please examine it. Is it Joseph's tunic? Is it our brother's tunic? Or if you were truly alienated from him, is it your son's tunic? And they go for that one. Yeah.
Right. They don't want to connect to him. It's not my brother, right? It's your son who you favored by giving him this special coat. You know, is this your son's tunic? That's really interesting, Roger. Thank you. Okay, where, I don't remember where we left off. Darla, will you read this?
Jacob rent his clothes, put sackcloth on his loins, and observed mourning for his son many days. All his sons and daughters sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, saying, "No, I will go down mourning to my son in Sheol." Thus my father bewailed him. The Midianites, meanwhile, sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, the courtier of Pharaoh and his chief steward.
Okay, so Joseph is sold into slavery. His father is mourning him, thinking he's dead. There's a commentary I didn't put in here, but I'll just share it with you. It basically says, why can't Jacob be comforted? It was a really interesting explanation. It says you can't comfort, there's no comfort for somebody when the person's not really dead. When somebody has lost a loved one, that God helps that person deal with the death and tries to comfort the person. But because Joseph's not really dead, there's no comfort for him. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Marilyn Cryer, would you like to read? You're muted, Marilyn.
Which Marilyn?
Marilyn Cryer. There you go.
When Joseph was taken down to Egypt, a certain Egyptian, Potiphar, a courtier of Pharaoh, and his chief steward brought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. God was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he stayed in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that God was with him and that God lent success to everything he undertook, he took a liking to Joseph. He made him his personal attendant, and I'm covered up here, and put him in charge of his household, placing in his hands all that he owned.
So this idea of God granting success to our patriarchs, we see throughout the Torah, right? Abraham ends up a very rich man. Isaac, Jacob, right? He gets all those extra sheep for Laban. This success follows all of our patriarchs. It's a reminder that success comes from God, right? This idea that if you're successful and things are going well, that's a gift from God. So, but Potiphar is a smart man. He recognizes that things are going, anything Joseph touches turns to gold, so to speak. And so he gives him a lot of responsibility. So he's a slave, but it sounds like his life is not so bad. Jen Saber, you want to read this?
And from the time that the Egyptian put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, God blessed his house for Joseph's sake, so that the blessing of God was upon everything that he owned in the house, and with him there, he paid attention to nothing save the food that he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome.
Okay, so things are going well for Joseph. Everything's going well. But he was paying attention to his food. He was paying attention to his work. He was not being distracted by idols and Egyptian life. And then all of a sudden we hear again that he's well built and handsome. He's a good looking guy. So clearly that's important, right? Because the Torah doesn't so often comment on people's physical appearance. And now we're going to see why. Molly Beth, you want to read this?
Yes. And from the time that the Egyptian, after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, "Lie with me," but he refused. He said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master gives no thought to anything in this house, and all that he owns he has placed in my hands. He wields no more authority in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except yourself, since you are his wife. How then could I do this most wicked thing and sin before God?" And much as she coaxed Joseph day after day, he did not yield to her request to lie beside her, to be with her.
Okay, so good looking 17-year-old Joseph is trying, his master's wife is trying to seduce him, and he refuses her again and again and again and again. What does this say to you about Joseph? Thoughts?
Knows right from
refused,
wrong.
or he refused. I know there's only 4 of those in the whole Torah, and so it's an important thing to notice that he's not just saying no, he's refusing. He's flat out saying, almost like back off kind of thing.
Okay, so he's absolutely flat out refusing. He maybe has grown up a little bit since the boy who was, teasing his brothers, right? He's maybe seeing right from wrong, doesn't want to go ahead with this. Okay. Diane, you want to read?
Sure. One such day he came into the house to do his work, none of the household being there inside. She caught hold of him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and got away and fled outside. When she saw that he had left it in her hand and had fled outside, she called out to her servants and said to them, "Look, he had to bring us a Hebrew to dally with us. This one came to lie with me, but I screamed loud. And when he heard me screaming at the top of my voice, he left his garment with me and got away and fled outside."
So this could lead us to a whole discussion about a woman claiming to be violated, believing women when they say they were attacked. But what we have just from the straightforward text is that she is making this up. She's trying to get attention from her husband. But when Rashi reads this, he comments that when she tells Pharaoh what happened to her, she's in bed with Pharaoh, with Potiphar. She's got some kind of shtick plan trying to cause trouble. Okay. Going on. Deb, would you like to read?
There's a next screen that's not coming. There we go. She kept his garment beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew slave whom you brought into our house came to me to dally with me. But when I screamed at the top of my voice, he left his garment with me and fled outside." When his master heard this story, that his wife told him, namely, "Thus, and so your slave did to me," he was furious. So Joseph's master had him put in prison where the king's prisoners were confined. But even while he was there in prison.
It leaves us hanging to the next verse.
Okay.
And I don't have it here. Shoot. Okay, so it's going to talk about how even that God is with him, even when he's in prison. Sorry, I don't know how we ended up without the next part of that verse.
And for the second time in Joseph's brief life, a piece of clothing has spoken for him and shaped his fate, though he is nowhere to be found.
Very good, Roger. Right. These clothes for Joseph become very, very important. Interesting. And you got to figure that Potiphar is also a little unhappy about all the situation because he's been very successful while Joseph has been with him, and now he's going to lose that. All right. So now we're going to hear about what happens in jail. Wendy, do you want to read?
Sometime later.
Wait, sorry, Wendy.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Is that why he put him in prison instead of killing him? Because of the fact that Joseph had made him so successful?
That would be my guess. Yeah. All right, Wendy, go ahead.
Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt gave offense to their lord, the king of Egypt.
Okay, so they do something bad. So what did they do? According to Rashi, the cupbearer, there was a fly that was found in the Pharaoh's goblet. So he got mad. And about the baker, they found a pebble in his bread. So this is why they were in trouble and sent to jail. Wendy, keep going.
This is so foreshadowing. The cupbearer almost, you couldn't help it. A fly happens to be around, it ends up in there, it's wrong, couldn't help it. But a pebble gets in the bread probably only through human intervention. And I think this is going to give us some ideas on what happens to the two of them very soon.
Yep, very good, Roger. All right, Wendy, go ahead.
Pharaoh was angry with his two courtiers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the chief steward, in the same prison house where Joseph was confined. The chief steward assigned Joseph to them, and he attended them. When they had been in custody for some time, both of them, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, dreamed in the same night, each his own dream, and each his dream with its
own meaning. Sorry, got cut off at the bottom, with its own meaning. So as we're seeing, and Roger's pointing some of this out to us, there's a lot of repetition of themes in the story of Joseph, right? We have dreams that were before Joseph's dreams. Now we've got the dreams in prison. They're going to be dreams later with Pharaoh. We have the coat of many colors. We had this garment who was torn. There are definitely things that we see repeating here. Marilyn Franklin, you want to read?
When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were distraught. He asked Pharaoh's courtiers who were with him in custody in his master's house, saying, "Why do you appear downcast today?" And they said to him, "We had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." So Joseph said to them, "Surely God can interpret. Tell me your dreams."
Okay, so really importantly here, from the very beginning, Joseph says that the interpretation of dreams are not coming from Joseph. That Joseph is giving God's message of what these dreams mean. We're going to hear that here. We're going to hear that later when Pharaoh has dreams. The dreams are not being interpreted strictly by Joseph. They come from God. Sarah, go ahead.
Then the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. He said, "In my dream, there was a vine in front of me. On the vine, there were 3 branches. It had barely budded when out came its blossoms, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand."
Okay, so this is, again, interestingly, the cupbearer has all these dreams about cups and Pharaoh, right? It's all connected. Aviva, go ahead.
Joseph said to him, this is its interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will pardon you and restore you to your post. You will place Pharaoh's cup in his hand, as was your custom formerly when you were his cupbearer. But think of me when all is well with you again, and do me the kindness of mentioning me to Pharaoh, so as to free me from this place. For in truth I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, nor have I done anything here that they should have put me in the dungeon.
So as Roger says, the fly wasn't really the cupbearer's fault. Joseph says he's going to be free, but says, hey, remember me. Remember me so that I'm going to get saved here. And now we're going to hear the other dream, Darla.
When the chief baker saw how favorably he had interpreted, he said to Joseph, "There are baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of food for Pharaoh that a baker prepares, and the birds were eating it out of the basket above my head."
Okay, so now we have also, he's dreaming of bread, just like the cupbearer dreamed of wine. Marilyn Carr.
Joseph answered, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale you upon a pole, and the birds will pick off your flesh. On the 3rd day, his birthday, Pharaoh made a banquet for all his officials, and he singled out his chief cupbearer and his chief baker from among his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he impaled, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. I have a blank there.
I'll get the rest. Yet the chief cupbearer did not think of Joseph. He forgot him. Okay, so Joseph's interpretations, God's interpretations come through. The cupbearer survives but forgets Joseph, and the bread baker is killed by Pharaoh.
Tiffany, where's Potiphar?
We don't hear anything about him right now. We're going to hear a little bit about him later, but at this point, we are not hearing anything about him.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to try and move us a little bit back.
The cupbearer. Sorry, Tiffany. It says that he just forgot about him. Is that like a? I mean, I don't know if it says it's like a. It just says he forgot him. But is that like? I mean, how do you forget someone who interpreted that you were going to be released? I don't understand how a person could just stop and forget that.
I don't know if he forgot he existed, but he forgot him, and like he didn't mention him to Pharaoh. He went back to his old life and moved on. And maybe he was afraid to mention it to Pharaoh, like he didn't want to make Pharaoh mad about anything and chance getting back in prison, like he just didn't want to stir up trouble. But Joseph had said, remember me to Pharaoh, and clearly he doesn't remember him to Pharaoh. He will later. but not yet.
Right.
All right. I'm going to read a little bit because I want to see how much more we can cover in our last 8 minutes. After 2 years' time, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. When out of the Nile, they came up 7 cows, handsome and sturdy, and they grazed in the reed grass. But presently, 7 other cows came up from the Nile, close behind them, ugly and gaunt, and stood beside the cows on the bank of the Nile. The ugly, gaunt cows ate up the 7 handsome, sturdy cows, and Pharaoh awoke. Okay, so why the Nile? Because both sustenance and famine come from the Nile. Right? Everything growing in Egypt was only when the Nile was providing water. So Pharaoh fell asleep and dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, solid and healthy, grew on a single stalk, but close behind them sprouted 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 solid full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, it was a dream. The next morning, his spirit was agitated, and he sent for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dreams, but none could interpret it for Pharaoh. So this is a really interesting question. Why couldn't they figure it out? Like, why couldn't they figure out some answer to what it symbolized? So here's what Midrash Rabbah said. When it says that they couldn't interpret the dreams, it means that the interpretations they came up with, Pharaoh doesn't accept, right? They say the 7 good cows mean that you beget 7 daughters, and the 7 bad looking cows means that you're going to bury 7 daughters. And the 7 ears of grain that you will conquer 7 provinces, and the 7 thin ears that the 7 provinces will revolt against you. So it's really bad news, and Pharaoh doesn't want to hear it. So now when we hear from the chief cupbearer, he remembers Joseph. The chief cupbearer then spoke up and said to Pharaoh, I must make mention today of my offenses. Once Pharaoh was angry with his servants and placed me in custody in the house of the chief steward, together with the chief baker. We had dreams the same night, he and I, each of us, with a meaning of its own. A Hebrew youth was there with us, a servant of the chief steward. And when we told him our dreams, he interpreted them for us, telling us each the meaning of his dream. And as he interpreted for us, so it came to pass. I was restored to my post, and the other was impaled. So maybe this is why the cupbearer hadn't said anything to Pharaoh, because he was afraid that if he reminded him of being in jail, that Pharaoh might get mad again and send him back. So thereupon Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was rushed from the dungeon. He had his hair cut, changed his clothes, and he appeared before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, but no one can interpret it. Now I've heard it said that for you to hear a dream is to tell its meaning. And it's really important. Joseph answered Pharaoh saying, not I. God will see Pharaoh's welfare. Again, he's saying this is not for me. This says to me, Joseph has grown up a little bit. He's not the same egotistical kid he was with his brothers. Okay. So then Joseph tells the whole story. I skipped over a little bit, that Pharaoh tells the dreams. Okay. Joseph responds. Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told Pharaoh what he is to do about it. The 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears are 7 years. It is the same dream. The 7 lean and ugly cows that followed are 7 years, as are the 7 empty, scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I've told Pharaoh. God has revealed to Pharaoh what God is about to do. So Joseph keeps saying, this is God, this is not me. Immediately ahead are 7 years of great abundance in all the land of Egypt. After them will come 7 years of famine, and all the abundance of the land of Egypt will be forgotten, as the land is ravaged by famine. No trace of abundance will be left in the land because of famine thereafter, where it will be very severe. As for Pharaoh having the same dream twice, it means that the matter has been determined by God, and that God will soon carry it out, right? So what's coming? 7 years of abundance and really good crops, and then 7 years of famine. Accordingly, let Pharaoh find a man of discernment and wisdom and set him over the land of Egypt. And let Pharaoh take steps to appoint overseers over the land and organize the land of Egypt in 7 years of plenty. Let all the food of these good years that are coming be gathered, and let the grain be collected under Pharaoh's authority as food to be stored in the cities. Let that food be a reserve for the land of the 7 years of famine, which will come upon the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish in the famine. So Pharaoh likes this idea. He says, could we find another like him, a man in who is the spirit of God? So Pharaoh says to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there's none such discerning and as wise as you. You shall be in charge of my court, and by my command shall all my people be directed. Only with respect to the throne shall I be superior to you. So Joseph is really smart. Instead of just saying, here's the dream, he says, here's the dream and here's what to do about it. Here's how you can fix the situation. Here is the plan. This is a good lesson for us, right? If I really like it when somebody comes to me with a criticism but has a suggestion. I love that, right? This is not good, but here's how you can do better. Really, really helpful. This is kind of interesting midrash, okay, about what is it? There's none so understanding and wise as you. An understanding person in Hebrew, navon, is one who can deduce one thing from another. A wise one, a chacham, is one who possesses wisdom. A navon who is not chacham, right? A understanding person who isn't wise is like a mighty warrior who's unarmed. And a wise person who is not, doesn't have understanding is like a weakling with armaments. So a navon and a chacham is somebody who's strong and well armed. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm looking at the time. We're going to stop here. Our text when we're going to do the when we're going to do Joseph and his brothers, we'll take up here. We'll continue on where we left off. I want to tell you about two more things coming up. On tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we have our next LOMED book club. It's about a book called Israel Resilience. It's about resilience in Israel. It has some great lessons for us today as we are, continuing through this pandemic. You don't have to have read the book to come. It should be a really great discussion. We're co-sponsoring it with Israel Center. So it's the same link as the one used today. I encourage you to come. And next week on Thursday at 6:30, Jen Saber is going to do part 2 of her differentiation class for LOMED. You can come even if you didn't come to part 1. If you want to watch the recording of part 1 beforehand, you can do that as well. So I hope that you will join us for one or both of those sessions. We've been getting great turnouts for our lunch and learns and not so great in the evenings. And I really think it's because people are tired and burned out. And I really get that. But I encourage you to come and join us if you can on Zoom, because it'll be worth your while.
What time is the book club?
Book club's at 7, differentiation classes at 6:30. So, and it's all, you can find it all on the CJL website. All of LOMED classes are listed.
Okay.
So thank you to everybody for coming. I really apologize. I know my computer was a little glitchy, so I hope it didn't cause too much problem. But I'm wishing you all a wonderful day.
Thank you, Tippy.
Thank you.